if I stood on that. All right, afternoon everyone, feel free to fire away.
Prime Minister, how was that, speaking with first responders just now?
Well, this has been my first chance to come back and visit with those who were first on the scene, supporting the victims of Whakatāne White Island 9 months on, and good to see that in amongst everything, that this is still an incredibly tight-knit community and that they're all continuing to work and support each other as they recover with the double whammy of COVID as well.
What would you describe this community in Whakatāne? How can you describe it?
Oh, very, very close. And I really do believe that the fact that this happened in a community that is so tight-knit, that has such strong support networks within it, where people know one another, has made a difference, and you can see and feel that. But that's made a difference for those who are visitors to this place as well. And, you know, some of the letters that I've received since that day have demonstrated the difference that Ngāti Awa in particular have made to their period of grief and recovery.
Some of those first responders were talking about how December the 9th was etched in their memory.
Yes.
What's kind of etched in your memory from the first time that you visited after Whakatāne?
Many moments. Certainly that first moment arriving here, seeing the first responders at work, you know, the work that was being done to establish who had visited the island that day, who may have been affected, and making sure that we were doing all we could to reach out to the family of those who may have been visitors here. But also in the aftermath, visiting some of those who were being cared for in our hospitals is also a memory. So to hear how well some have done in their recovery is incredibly heartening and a tribute to our medical professionals.
It was palpable, wasn't it, as well, how raw that emotion is for some of those first responders 9 months on?
Oh, it is totally understandable given the trauma of that event, and it was incredibly traumatic for those involved, that is still so raw for everyone. And as they've said, they've had the double whammy of COVID on top as well.
What were some of the messages of people asking for help? You were talking to them about, you know, what else can we do as government? What were some of those messages?
Actually, for them, we talked a little bit about the fact that really early on, it was particularly for Whakatāne Hospital. Here was a team that were having to had worked very long hours, that of course had that immediate trauma of everyone coming into the hospital and then from there being dispatched out across the country. Just knowing that they needed some reprieve, and we spoke about the fact that that was one of our asks of Australia. They offered that help and they did provide that reprieve. They talked about what a difference that made, and so I think for us it's just keeping in touch, making sure that that respite is still there and that care is still there.
What's your response to calls for a Royal Commission into Whakatāne, Prime Minister?
Well, at the moment, of course, we still have the WorkSafe inquiry that's underway, and our view is we need to let that take its course, let them do their job, and of course the coroner and their involvement as well. It feels to me though that we would be duplicating a lot of the work and answers that we're likely to be provided by those inquiries were we to come in with anything else over the top.
You don't believe there's a possible conflict of interest with WorkSafe?
No, I believe that with the couple together with the coroner as well, that we will get the answers that we need and that the community wants and needs as well. And of course, you know, in the aftermath of receiving those reports, if we feel that we haven't answered those questions, there are always other options. But at this stage, I think that will be a timely way to be able to see what we need to do in the future to keep everyone involved in adventure tourism safe, and also to better understand what happened here.
Last time you were here, you met the first responders and met with the families as well. You're able to hug them, do things that
Yes.
are normal for you. How unnatural is it to be meeting them again and, you know, elbow bump, be relegated to elbow bump?
Oh, I think that everyone in New Zealand will be feeling that impact of social distancing, that it's not our normal way to greet each other with our elbows, but everyone also knows it's a way of looking after one another. But yeah, in these particular environments, it's not the way we would usually meet.
How much do you feel that crisis has defined your leadership?
Well, I think for us as a nation, there's no separating out, you know, the past 3 years from the tragedies that have also punctured through them as well. It's part of not just my DNA now, it's part of New Zealand's for all of us. But ultimately, though, I think what also has been a mark of that time has been the way that New Zealand has responded, and that has been as telling as the tragedies themselves.
Today's tax policy, why didn't you guys go harder to try and recoup more revenue given that we've been borrowing so much?
So now is the time to provide New Zealanders with certainty and with confidence. And with this policy, it assures that we will not have, for instance, harsh cuts to health and education, and we can keep a lid on debt. And that's something we need to give people certainty over.
And can you give people a categorical assurance that you will not be raising any taxes, making any big changes to taxes?
This is the totality of our tax policy, and again, we want to give people that certainty, and tax policy is an area where they want to see that. So that's what we've released today. And I hope alongside that people can see our commitment to retaining health, to retaining education, to keeping a lid on debt, and doing that in such a way that does affect, only less than 2% of New Zealanders.
How much money will it bring in?
Yep. So we're talking roughly in the range of 500 million. Of course, keeping in mind what we will need to do is make sure that people are fulfilling the expectations. We have put extra money into IRD to track those who may be seeking to avoid our tax arrangements in New Zealand, be it PAYE or others.
Why did you settle on 39% top tax bracket? Obviously, the equivalent rate in Australia is considerably higher.
Yeah, you are right to point out this does put us at a lower tax rate than Australia, but keeping in mind that this is about choosing an option that is best for New Zealand in our times. So this is a balanced approach. It means that we are affecting a small group, less than 2%, but we are at the same time bringing in revenue that will mean that we can retain the high quality of health and education services and keep a lid on debt.
What's your message to the 2% of people who will be affected, who will be paying more tax?
Oh, well, my colleagues who are ministers are amongst those, and we know that this is the right thing to do. It is about balance. It is about finding, of course, solutions for the times that we are in and making sure that we can continue to see all New Zealanders have a high quality health and education system.
I know you ruled out a capital gains tax under your leadership, but circumstances do change and there have never been circumstances quite like this year. Is there any chance a capital gains tax could come back under your leadership?
I've already ruled that out.
Never.
I've ruled it out.
Is there a reason you didn't want to be there for the launch of this tax policy?
Oh, no. And no, I wouldn't describe it in that way either. In fact, there was, of course, our last campaign plan had Minister Robertson and I in the immediate aftermath campaigning together. It's simply circumstance.
So dropping that threshold down to 150k so that MPs would be caught in the net?
Well, ministers are obviously, again, for us it's not just about those factors. For us it was about how can we make sure that we are bringing in revenue that helps secure those services New Zealanders most value, that affects a small number of New Zealanders, less than 2%, but also provides people certainty. This is a really difficult time in New Zealand's history and the globe's history. We've chosen a policy that we feel balances the certainty and confidence people need right now.
How does $500 million a year do anything to capital gains?
Oh, well, again, as you've heard me say, it's also about retaining services. You would have seen an approach of a different government and a different political party in the past through the GFC, of course, who had a policy of growth being the way to make sure that debt was paid down, and that is part of our plan too. But in order to generate growth, you need to invest in your people, you need to invest in productivity, you need to be supporting small business in the way that we did yesterday. All of that does come at a cost. This policy enables us to keep investing in that growth, which will also help us pay down debt.
There's a new report that a cannabis legalisation would rake in about $1 billion a year. Would you be interested in that?
Oh, well, of course, we already have before voters a legislative framework where if they chose to vote for that legislation, then of course that product then comes into that regime. That's ultimately for voters and for the referendum.
Those reports show really compelling economic arguments, don't they? Is that enough to push you across the line? Would you vote for cannabis?
Of course, my position has been that it's my job to implement the outcome that voters choose. It's my job to make sure people have all the information to make that decision. And what we have committed to is whatever voters decide will be what we implement if we form government after the election.
Could cannabis be the answer to our COVID cash watch?
Oh, well, look, voters will want to make their own decision, and I'm sure that they won't just be making a decision around revenue. They'll be factoring in the impact on health and well-being. But that is one of many factors that will be involved in people's decision making.
If the public does vote for it, what would the government spend that extra income on?
Again, revenue at present, of course, as you've seen from our economic plan and our plan for COVID recovery, is very much about investing in our people, making apprenticeships free, supporting our small businesses to grow, targeted support for our exporters that also help grow our economy, and making sure that we keep investing in those services we rely on. All of that helps ensure that we keep a lid on debt and that we continue to thrive as a nation with decent services.
Why are you so funny about cannabis? Because you've stated positions on things in the past, but why on cannabis?
Oh, and I've actually given a personal view around how on both sides of the argument there are things that I know will be considered that I have in the past. The issue around not wanting to see our young people criminalised, but on the flip side, not wanting to see the health impacts of young people accessing that product as well. There are arguments on both sides. My job is to make sure those are had and that people have faith that whatever the outcome, I will implement it and be true to that, and I will.
Have you not decided yet?
No, it's not a matter of that it is at all. I've many times put my position on this and the reason for it.
On Tiwai Point, Winston Peters says keeping it open for longer would be a bottom line for New Zealand First. What's your response to that?
Oh, well, I'd like to think that actually our position is very similar to those that I've spoken to locally in their position locally. What we all, I think, want to see is a planned exit. Tiwai and Rio Tinto, they have made their decision, and now the debate comes down to just what the timeline is for them to execute it.
He's also said that he thinks the Greens and Labour want Tiwai out of business. Is that the case?
Rio Tinto have made their own commercial decision, and their decision has been that they wish to cease operating at Tiwai. Now the question is, how can we plan that exit so that we make use of the energy resource that will exist, and also that we make sure people have high quality, high wage jobs once it's exited? Yeah.
What would you do better regarding your response to Whakatāne, and how prepared are we as a country in terms of the future?
I think there are lessons to be learned. Much of that, though, I do want to leave to those who are in the position to look at all of the evidence, and that will be through, for instance, the WorkSafe investigation. I think globally, the world's scientists are constantly looking for ways to make sure that we're using our warning systems to the best effect to keep people safe, and I'm sure that will be one of the things that we keep analysing and looking at whether or not there is more that we could or should have done.
Prime Minister, National says today's tax announcement is just the beginning, and Labor will eventually widen the net and come after middle income earners. How would you characterise those claims? Misinformation. This is our policy. We have now released it. Anything that comes from the opposition should be characterised as simply opposition politics, and sadly it seems misinformation.
Prime Minister,
Oh, that,
I'm a practice nurse.
oh, hello.
And I'm just wondering if there's any light at the end of the tunnel for practice nurses to achieve pay parity with their DHB colleagues.
Well, of course, pay negotiations is something that we are frequently in talks over, and we've put a significant amount in to make sure that we see our nurses on a better footing in the last 3 years. But when it comes to parity discussions, that is something that ultimately our DHBs are in negotiation over, and I can't come in and right over the top of that at present. Yeah.
Can Kiri Allen win East Coast?
Yes.
How is she going to do that?
By continuing to do what she's doing now, which is advocating for $300 million worth of funding to have come into this region to support jobs, to support our young people having opportunities, and ultimately to see transformational change in places like here in Whakatāne and Oporiki, just for example.
These are sort of seats, these sort of margins that you think you can achieve at the moment?
Do you know, actually, I think what is going to create change here is the fact that we are investing in regions that previously have had long-term neglect. And when I come in and talk to local government and I talk to iwi and they say that it will be transformational, the investments that are being made here, that's what I know will make a difference. And that has come about through the advocacy of the likes of Kiri Allen.
Can I invite Kiri to make a pitch?
Yeah, you may.
Can I invite you, Kiri, to make a pitch? What's your pitch to voters to come along?
Yeah, sure. I think
To the microphones, please.
Oh, well,
by
there
all
we go.
means.
I think that our government has done exactly as the boss just said. We've swung in behind our region. Regions like ours have been neglected for far too long. You talk to anybody from Minganui through to Murupara, through to Opotiki, through to Te Kaha, through to Waiho, you would have seen a presence of this government investing in those communities. It's about those communities leading and us getting in behind them. So I think that that's been a big target of this government over the past 3 years, and that's what we'll keep on doing.
Prime Minister, how frustrating is it that we see
The last couple of questions.
a case that was an undisclosed close contact?
It just demonstrates how important it is that people really work closely with our health team on the ground. You know, to keep other people safe, we do need to know people's close contacts. We do need to know what their activity has been. And again, this is not because people are in trouble, it's because that's how we look after one another. So that is frustrating, but it is one of the things that actually is not unique to New Zealand. Any contact tracing system does come up against these issues from time to time.
And how concerning is it that they were at school?
I don't think, to be fair, my understanding is that it's not necessarily those who are currently affected who are in the wrong here, but they may have come into contact with others who have not necessarily been as helpful to our health people on the ground. So I don't wish to place blame there.
The last 3 years have been tough on everyone in New Zealand. Has there ever been a point where you've just been like, too much, I just don't want to get out of bed today, because you've been front and centre the whole time? Has there ever been a point where you're just like, no, this is too much?
There has never been a moment that I've ever lost hope. And I say that having experienced alongside the rest of New Zealand a terrorist attack, a volcanic eruption and a global pandemic. I've never ever lost hope. All right, thanks everyone.